Refused to back down, and protesters have once again started to flock to the streets of Myanmar, denouncing the military coup in the country and demanding the release of elected leader Suu Kyi. This despite Myanmar's military ruler gave a televised address threatening action against large gatherings. Opponents of Myanmar's military coup vowed to continue non-violent action, including peaceful protests and civil disobedience campaigns across Myanmar today. In San Chaung Township, where gatherings are currently banned, scores of teachers marched on the main road, waving a defiant three-finger salute. Now remember, the three-finger salute was popularized around the world by pro-democracy protesters in Thailand last year, and now once again we are seeing the three-finger salute by the protesters in Myanmar who have raised their voice against the military coup in their country. Protesters in large numbers also gathered in Myanmar's commercial capital. Despite new decrees, the demonstrators in Yangon held up placards in support of deposed leader, in support of Suu Kyi, who has been deposed and has been taken into custody by the military. Protests demanding the release of leaders have been gathering pace, with thousands of demonstrators coming onto the streets. The military so far refrained from using force to stop the protests, but with pressure slowly building, riot police used water cannons to disperse thousands of people who had gathered on a highway in the capital yesterday. Martial law has been declared in 7 townships in Myanmar's Mandalay. Bans on big gatherings, night curfews and road closures are in place after the biggest demonstrations in more than a decade took place in Myanmar. The junta leader stressed that the military, also known as the Tatmadaw, exists for the people of Myanmar.
Tatmadaw is always there for the citizens. Citizens are the mothers. Citizens are the fathers. The Tatmadaw always acts according to the law and obeys the constitution of 2008. The Tatmadaw held the election for justice for all the parties, which led to democracy, the way people always wanted.
So protests continue in Myanmar, and we are now being joined live by Phil Robertson, who's the Deputy Director at the Asia Division of Human Rights Watch. Phil, welcome to WION. Thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast. Now, what we have seen so far, Phil, the visuals that we are getting from Myanmar, even as thousands of people are on the streets, the protests have been largely peaceful. It's only the riot police and the military authorities who have used water cannons in certain areas. So why the restrictions? Why have restrictions been imposed when the protests are peaceful, until and unless the Myanmar military leadership is afraid of the growing support to these protests? Restrictions have been ordered, police fired water cannons, rallies and gatherings of more than 5 people have been banned. There are night curfews, motorized processions have been banned. Why is the restrictions in place?
This is a military junta that is afraid of the people. It's not doing it for the people. Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, when he gave that speech yesterday, was basically lying when he said that Tatmadaw does it for the people and obeys the people as they would the mother and father. I think no self-respecting child would do what the military has done to the people of Myanmar and call that a paternal or maternal relationship. The reality is that they are trying to do anything they can to stop the protesters from coming out on the streets. And there's popular outrage because people do not want to go back to a military dictatorship. They had almost 5 decades of military dictatorship under this same military. They know what it means. It means human rights abuses. It means corruption. It means economic impoverishment. It means all the bad things that they have tried to escape. And one of the reasons they were supporting Aung San Suu Kyi and the National League for Democracy is that they formed a democratic bulwark against military returning to power. And now that this has happened, this is everybody's worst nightmare. So people, I think, are very committed to see this to the end. And it means that they have to brave actions, including violent actions by the authorities. I think they're prepared to do that. So far, we have seen excessive use of force by the police using water cannons on peaceful groups of protesters in several places, particularly the administrative capital, Naypyidaw, But we're concerned that this is going to spread and that the authorities are going to crack down even harder and, commit arrests and unlawful detentions as well.
Phil, let me read out a statement from the Ministry of Information. They said, I quote, "Democracy can be destroyed if there is no discipline. We will have to take legal action to prevent acts that are violating state stability, public safety, and the rule of law." But one can argue that it's the military in Myanmar that is destroying the democracy, the hard-earned democracy in the country.
I would agree that the real source of instability is this military coup. That the situation was one where people were moving towards a new government that had been overwhelmingly elected by the people. More than 80% of the people voted for Aung San Suu Kyi and the National League for Democracy, and it was about to convene the new parliament. It's the military that has destabilized the situation by seizing power using completely bogus grounds, which they claim, over 10 million various actions against, the election. They say that there are all these election irregularities, but they provided no proof. They provided no evidence. And so ultimately, it is the people who are saying we are not going to go along with the military's plan, and we are not going to accept that the military controls us again as they did in the past.
Phil, one final question. Suu Kyi continues to remain in custody, and we are seeing ever-growing support for the protests that have spread to multiple cities across Myanmar now. Thousands of people are out on the streets in what was the biggest protest in Myanmar in over a decade. So people are clearly not going to sit around and accept the military takeover of their country. But the military leadership has promised a fresh election in a year's time, and they have said they will hand power back to a democratically elected government in a year's time. Can the military leadership be taken on, or can we take them? Can we believe what they are saying? They will once again transfer power to a democratically elected government.
No. I mean, they really can't be trusted. I mean, the reality is that the Myanmar military has a number of occasions promised to return power to the people in the past and then not done so. I think that people have no real faith that the Myanmar military is intent on doing anything except holding power. And our concern, frankly, is that they're prepared to use force to do that, which is why we are calling on the international community to adopt an international arms embargo against the Myanmar military, where we're calling for different countries to pursue targeted sanctions against the top leaders of the Myanmar military and also the military companies, because the military controls large amounts of that economy, and they have been making profits off the back of the people that has been going right into military coffers. So people need to target things that are going to make the military recognize that they cannot proceed forward and they're going to have to give up power.
All right, Phil Robertson, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your perspective on the situation in Myanmar.